It was a quiet Saturday morning, and I was enjoying my cup of tea when the doorbell rang. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, for your support means the world to me. Now back to my story. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not my son and his new wife. Heart pounding, I opened the door. There she stood, my daughter-in-law. Her smile was smug, almost mocking, and her eyes glinted with something I couldn't quite name: arrogance. Threat. I felt a chill run down my spine. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. My son followed hesitantly, glancing at me nervously. "Mom, it's nothing serious," he whispered, trying to ease the tension. But something about her energy made my stomach twist. Before I could respond, she suddenly raised her hand and slapped me across the face. Shock froze me in place. "Give me the house keys," she demanded, her voice sharp and cold. I stared at her, my mind racing. How could someone I barely knew treat me like this? My son looked stricken, caught between fear and loyalty. I realized instantly, this was no random outburst. This was calculated, meant to humiliate, to assert dominance. I knew I couldn't react impulsively or I'd regret it. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. To stay calm, my eyes met hers. Steady and unwavering. I would not give in, not today, not to her. Because something told me this confrontation was only the beginning, and I intended to finish it on my terms. She stood in my living room, arms crossed, as if she already owned the place. Her glare was sharp, and every word she spoke dripped with entitlement. "I want the keys by tonight," she said, voice trembling with forced authority, "or you'll regret it." I took a slow, deliberate breath. Calmness was my weapon. "You want the keys?" I asked evenly. "Then tell me why you think you deserve them." Her eyes narrowed. "Because I'm your son's wife. This house is supposed to be ours now. You have no right to hold on to it forever." I felt my pulse quicken, but I forced myself to remain composed. She had misunderstood, or worse, deliberately twisted, the situation. My home wasn't just bricks and walls. It was decades of memories, a sanctuary I wasn't about to surrender because of her arrogance. "Fine," I said softly, measuring each word. "We'll see how serious you are. But you must understand, this house isn't just a building. It holds a lifetime of memories, and I will protect it." For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Her lips curled into a smirk. "You're overreacting," she said. "Just give me the keys, and we can all move on peacefully." I shook my head slowly. "Not today." With a dramatic slam of the door, she left, storming out like a tempest. My son lingered behind, silent and uneasy, and I realized something crucial. This wasn't over. It had only begun. That night, I began to formulate a plan. Patience, strategy, and observation would be my allies. She had thrown the first punch, but the game was far from finished, and I intended to win. I knew I couldn't rely on my son. He was too hesitant, too loyal to his wife, and far too caught up in fear to take action. If I wanted to protect my home, I had to rely on myself. That night, I reviewed the property documents, double-checking every detail, every paper, every signature, every legal clause. It had to be airtight. I couldn't afford a single mistake. One weak link and she could exploit it. Next, I reached out to an old friend, a lawyer I trusted. I explained the situation carefully, making sure to convey the seriousness without letting fear dictate my words. "She's aggressive," I said. "She's manipulative, and she won't stop until she gets what she wants. I need guidance." Meanwhile, I began observing her carefully. Even through social media, I could see her personality: ambitious, impulsive, and controlling. She thrived on intimidation and drama. The slap wasn't just an act of violence, it was a statement. I realized confrontation would only make things worse. She was unpredictable, so I decided on a patient approach. Watch, wait, and prepare. Every interaction, every word, every move I made would be calculated to reveal her true intentions without showing my own hand. By the end of the week, a plan had formed in my mind. If she wanted a battle, she would have won, but it would be on my terms. She would learn that my house wasn't hers to claim, and I would ensure it, not through anger but through strategy. Because I had one advantage she hadn't counted on: calmness, foresight, and determination. And that advantage was about to tip the scales in my favor. It had been a week since her first outburst, and I thought I had a handle on things, but nothing could have prepared me for her next move. That afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I peeked through the peephole and saw her, standing there with the same smug confidence, as if she had already won. My heart sank slightly, but I reminded myself to stay calm. She didn't wait for an invitation. "I'm taking those keys today," She barked the moment the door opened. I held her gaze, keeping my voice steady. "Come in," I said slowly, as if nothing had happened. Inside, I had set up a small recording device, just in case. Every threat, every aggressive word needed to be documented. She thrived on intimidation, and I intended to turn her weapon against her. She noticed my faint smile. "What are you smiling about? You think this is funny?" "No," I said evenly. "I just want to make sure we are clear about our boundaries." She laughed, a sharp, condescending sound that grated on my nerves. "Boundaries? You're overreacting. Give me the keys, and we can all move on peacefully." I shook my head. "Not today." Her reaction was immediate and explosive. She slammed her hands on the table, shoved chairs, and yelled as if trying to prove she had control. Every outburst confirmed what I had suspected. Her power relied entirely on fear. Remove that fear and she was powerless. By the time she left, red-faced and fuming, I felt a small surge of satisfaction. Patience and preparation had been my weapons, and she had just revealed all her cards too early. I knew one thing: the real battle was only beginning. The days after her first attempt were uneasy. She didn't stop. She tried to manipulate my son, whispering in his ear, planting seeds of doubt. "Your mother just doesn't want us to be happy," she said slyly, hoping he would pressure me. At first, it seemed like her plan was working. My son looked conflicted, torn between loyalty to me and the constant pressure from his wife. But slowly, he began noticing her inconsistencies. The sudden bursts of anger, the shifting stories, the overreactions, it all painted a picture he couldn't ignore. One evening, I called him aside. "I'm not your enemy," I said gently, "but you need to see what's happening. This isn't about love or family, it's about control." He hesitated, then nodded, a flicker of realization crossing his face. For the first time, he began questioning her motives. I felt a small victory. She could no longer manipulate both of us so easily. That night, we talked strategy. It had to be careful, subtle, and firm. I would protect my home without letting her escalate matters dangerously. And my son, finally aware of the truth, would stand with me. I realized something vital. Patience was my greatest weapon. By letting her make the first moves and revealing her true nature, I had gained the advantage. The power was no longer entirely in her hands. From that moment on, I knew how the game would be played. She might be bold and aggressive, but I was calm, prepared, and no longer afraid. And the next confrontation, it would be decisive. A few days later, she returned, expecting me to yield. The moment I opened the door, her eyes blazed with impatience. "I want the keys," she shouted, slapping the table this time, hoping to intimidate me. I held my ground, keeping my voice calm. "You want the keys, there are conditions." I said firmly, "You respect me, my home and our family, or you get nothing." Her smirk faltered for the first time. "And if I refuse?" she demanded, her voice tight with frustration. "You'll prove you're not ready to own a home," I replied evenly. It was then that my son stepped forward, his voice steady. "Enough, Mom's right. You can't treat us or her like this." For the first time, she realized she was being challenged. The smug confidence she had relied on disappeared. Replaced by shock and fury, she tried to argue, to push back, but the presence of her husband's ally, my son, shifted the balance. Her temper flared, but she quickly recognized she couldn't win without crossing serious boundaries. The room was tense, charged with anger and suppressed power. But I remained composed. I had waited for this moment. The moment when she realized she could not intimidate me without consequences. By the time she stormed out, she had learned something critical. Control wasn't taken by force alone. It could be neutralized by calm, strategy, and allies. I exhaled slowly, feeling a surge of relief. The first decisive victory was mine, but I knew the final resolution still lay ahead. This confrontation had set the stage, and I was ready for whatever came next. After the confrontation, I knew I needed more than words to protect my home. I retrieved the recordings I had secretly made during her first outburst. The slaps, the threats, the demands, every word she had spoken in anger, every attempt to intimidate me was captured. I called my son into the living room. "Listen to this," I said calmly. He put on the headphones, and as her voice filled the room, his eyes widened. "Mom, I can't believe she said all this," he murmured. He finally saw her for who she really was: aggressive, manipulative, and entitled. We went over the recordings together. The proof was undeniable. She had no legal claim, no moral claim, and now no leverage. Everything she had tried to use against us was documented, leaving her exposed. Armed with this evidence, I felt a surge of confidence. No longer did I need to endure her tantrums silently. Now I had the power to protect my home without raising my voice, or escalating further. It was clear she had underestimated me. She had thought aggression alone would work, but preparation, patience, and foresight had given me the ultimate advantage. That night, I reviewed my strategy one last time. When she returned, and I knew she would, I would confront her with calm authority. Not anger, this house, this sanctuary of memories, would remain mine, and she would finally understand that threats only worked on the unprepared. The balance of power had shifted. I was no longer defending. I was ready to assert control. A few days later, she appeared again, expecting compliance. Her eyes flared with the same aggression, her hands trembling with frustration. "I want the keys," she shouted, slamming her fists on the table. I remained seated, calm and collected. "You've crossed the line," I said firmly. "If you ever threaten me again, or try to take this house by force, we will take legal action. This is your only warning." She opened her mouth, ready to argue, but I didn't give her a chance. I pressed play on the recordings. Her voice filled the room, angry, entitled, demanding. Every outburst, every threat she had made, now served as undeniable proof. My son stood silently behind me, watching her reaction. Her confident facade cracked. She realized for the first time that her tactics had been documented and could be used against her. The smirk vanished, replaced by hesitation and fear. She backed away, muttering under her breath, realizing she had no leverage left. The room was tense, the silence heavy, but the message was clear. Intimidation would not work here, not anymore. As she stormed out defeated, I felt a wave of relief. This confrontation was decisive. My patience, preparation, and careful strategy had neutralized her aggression without a single act of revenge. I turned to my son. "See, respect is earned, not taken by force," I said softly. He nodded, finally understanding the importance of boundaries and calm authority. The battle was over, for now peace had returned, and my home and my dignity were fully protected. The days that followed were quiet, almost eerily so. The tension that had dominated the house was gone, replaced by a calm that felt like a reward for endurance and strategy. My daughter-in-law had not returned, and I sensed she was beginning to realize the consequences of her actions. My son, finally seeing the truth, stayed close. "Mom, I almost didn't see it," he admitted one evening. "I almost let her manipulate me. But you stayed calm. You handled it perfectly." I smiled softly. "Patience and preparation win more battles than anger ever could," I replied. She tried to reach out via phone and messages, but the tone had changed. She no longer demanded or threatened. Her messages were polite, restrained, even cautious. It was clear she understood that her aggressive tactics had failed, and any attempt to force her way back into control would now be met with consequence. I realized then that the true victory wasn't just keeping the house. It was the lesson learned. Strength didn't need to roar. Sometimes it simply waited, observed, and acted strategically. My son had seen it, and our bond had grown stronger, built on trust, respect, and the knowledge that family isn't just about blood. It's about protection and wisdom. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. My home, my sanctuary, and my dignity were intact. And she, the woman who had once tried to take it all by force, had finally understood her limits. The storm had passed, leaving only calm, and the knowledge that patience and clever strategy always prevail. Months passed, and peace returned to my home. My daughter-in-law had moved on, leaving the threats and tantrums behind. The house, my sanctuary, remained safe, not because of force, but because of patience, preparation, and clear boundaries. I often reflected on that slap, the audacity, the anger, the humiliation. It had been shocking in the moment, but in hindsight it had taught me an invaluable lesson. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it watches, waits, and strikes at the right moment. My son and I grew closer through the ordeal. He had seen firsthand how calm determination could outmaneuver aggression. He no longer feared standing up to manipulation, and our relationship deepened with mutual respect. I realized that my home was more than a property. It was a symbol of dignity, resilience, and the wisdom to navigate challenges without giving in to fear. Every corner held memories, and every decision I made to protect it reinforced my authority, not through violence, but through intelligence and patience. Occasionally I would think of her, my daughter-in-law, and smile softly. She had learned a powerful lesson about boundaries, respect, and the consequences of overstepping them. And me, I had reaffirmed something even more important. My strength, my home, and my peace could never be taken by someone who didn't understand the value of patience, foresight, and unwavering calm. In the end, justice wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, deliberate, and lasting. And that is the kind of victory that endures. The house was quiet again, but the memory of that day, the slap, the demands, the confrontation, lingered. It had tested me, my patience, and my resolve, but it also revealed something vital. True strength doesn't shout. It observes, plans, and acts with precision. My daughter-in-law had learned her limits. She realized that intimidation and aggression could not force respect or ownership. And I had reaffirmed my authority, not through anger, but through careful strategy, calm reasoning, and unwavering boundaries. My son had grown too, understanding that loyalty doesn't mean blind compliance. Respect and wisdom were worth more than fear or manipulation. Together, we rebuilt our peace, fortified by the lessons we had learned. As I walked through the halls of my home, every room a testament to resilience and foresight, I smiled. Some battles are not won with force, but with patience, intelligence, and courage, and that is how a home and a family truly remain safe. Because in the end, power isn't about who yells the loudest. It's about who stands firm when it matters most.